Okay, and I just want to quickly pray too, and I just want to say, Lord, I just pray that the things that I say, Lord, would be the things that people need to hear today. So thank you, Lord. Amen. Okay, for anybody that expected to see me in a suit today, you were wrong. And that just doesn't happen. It hasn't happened for a long time. One of the things that I've discovered in my life, and I think this is something that really happens a lot with Christians. We get saved, we read the book of Revelations, we read where in the last days difficult times will come, and we become fearful. We become fearful a lot like the people that Moses was leading in the wilderness, where we want to hang on to our manna rather than going into the promised land and taking the land. And, we can stay there. We can stay in the place where, the manna is provided for us on a daily basis, and we just kind of experience that life. Or we can go in and take the land. But one of the things we're going to have to do is we're going to have to work for it. This is what I'm going to be talking about today is not Jesus is going to drop kick us through the goalpost of life. I'm going to tell you my experience, where I've come from. I'll tell you that I've had more small businesses literally than I can remember. And 2 of them I sold to a New York Stock Exchange listed company. Every business that I've ever started, I've known nothing about. I had no idea what I was doing. And one of the things that I want to emphasize to you, that anybody who's going to be looking to start a business, you start it with whatever you have. I started my first business when I was homeless for the second time with 4 3x5 cards I found in a trash dumpster and an ink pen that was lying in a parking lot. And you don't have to have what you think you have to start a business. Because whatever you start with, when you're ready to go to the next level, what you need is going to be there. And I can tell you countless stories about literally, I felt like I was hanging off the edge of a cliff, hanging onto a twig. And I wish I could have told you that I had faith that God was going to show up, but I didn't. And He did. There are things that, I'd like to get into it, but we don't have time for that today. I'd like to tell you some of those stories just to encourage you. Maybe we'll have time for 1 or 2. And what I'd like to do at the end of it is do a Q&A for anybody who has any questions, and I'll see, if anything can answer. I want to tell you that I don't give investment advice, and I don't give legal advice. But what I am going to do is try to give you some information that hopefully takes the fear out of investing. Because your income is never going to make you rich, but saving and investing is what makes you rich. I just want to say there is no reason in this country for everybody to not be rich. Because if you start a business in this country, you're starting off on third base. You try to go to any other country in the world and start a business, and it's not going to be like this. I had a conversation with a woman this week. I got off the plane coming back from Arizona. She was on the phone. She wanted to see some space to rent. She is a sister of a tenant I already have. This family, their parents came over here from Vietnam with 0. Her father was told to go to the welfare office and get on welfare. He goes to the welfare office and they say, come back in 2 weeks and tell us where you've looked for a job. And he thought, well, I'm going to do that. I'm actually going to go get a job. And he did. This woman is a doctor. Her sister that rents from me now has a PhD, worked for a pharmaceutical company as a researcher. They brought one of her drugs to market. And they have brothers too. In this country, we're such whiners. And we have a mindset that we can't do it. And people come over here from overseas and they see it nothing but opportunity. You go and you talk to some of the Chinese people in South LA. That's like trying to open a business over on Quindaro Boulevard in Kansas City, Kansas. And the Chinese people call it the Golden Mountain. So I want to give you a little bit of background on myself so you know who's talking to you. because I'd certainly want to know that if I were you guys. It's like, who is this guy? And what's he talking to us about? I was born into a house. There were 9 kids. I was youngest. My parents, lived there also, so it was a house of 11. It was a 1-bedroom house, and it had just enough room in the bedroom so for a double bed to fit in, and you get around each side to make it. When I was 11 months old, the family was split up for various reasons. The kids were distributed to live in different parts of the country. I was raised by an aunt and uncle down in Corder. I had to start working. My uncle was a trenching contractor, and I know that many of you probably don't know what field tile are, but I had to start working when I was 3 in the field carrying these tile. By the time I was 7, I was driving cars on the public roads. I was driving farm tractors and operating every piece of equipment we had. By the time I was 13, I hated living in this town, and I was bored to stinking tears. So I left. And I landed on Quindaro Boulevard in Kansas City, Kansas. Got a job on a paper route. The guy had a paper route down there for the Kansas City Star. And I went around door to door at night, knocking on doors, collecting for the Kansas City Star. Now, has anybody ever thought of a more difficult job than trying to collect money in the ghetto at night? And knocking on somebody's door? I mean, yeah, you, okay. And I was going to an inner city school, and this is not an exaggeration, I got beat up about twice a week and had my lunch money stolen. Sometimes as many as 3 times a week. When I was in high school, I was homeless most of the time. I played in bands, we played clubs, and literally at that time, we had the most working band in the city because I was booking us and writing the contracts. I wasn't any good as a musician, but I was worth my weight in gold to the band because I kept us booked. But still, most of the time I was homeless because I did a lot of drugs, and that can kind of consume some of your money. Literally I had also holes in the bottom of my shoes that were worn through, and I used to stuff cardboard in them to keep the snow out. And I'd walk the streets at night looking for a place to stay. I used to go into restaurants and eat what was left on people's plates. But I graduated from high school on time, and I can't tell you what it is. It must have been the grace of God because I wasn't saved. But I graduated from high school on time. For some reason, it just never entered my mind to not complete high school. My first semester at college, I was living on the soccer field at Kansas City, Kansas Community Junior College until the fall started hitting and it started to rain. And so I moved into the right field dugout of a ball diamond called Lyandotte Field. And somebody picked me up for school in the morning, give me a ride to school, and until he dropped out, then I didn't have a ride to school and I had to drop out. And it was December, and it was snowing, and I had only the clothes on my back, a guitar and amplifier that was over somebody's house, and a borrowed sleeping bag that wouldn't zip up. And I was so cold that night, and it was snowing, I thought I might die. And at that point, I thought, even being a Christian has to be better than this. So I went over to a friend's house and prayed with them. I got saved. And, all I knew is things started changing. I'll never forget what it was like the first time I took a bath in my own bathtub. I'll never forget that. Things went great for a while. I had this great relationship with God. I was determined to not be homeless again. I worked very hard. I didn't have anybody to teach me anything. I didn't even have anybody to teach me that I needed to sleep. So I only budgeted 3 hours of sleep a day between noon and 3. And then, I didn't really sleep because I knew it was light outside. So I lost everything again, became homeless, and moved into the basement of a building that every time it rained, it was like a trout stream running through it, and there was mold climbing the walls. And then they decided to tear the building down, and the management of the building said, Gary's down there. What are we going to do with Gary? So they said, well, we got this room over at this other building, and it's the women's restroom, and he can move in there. So I was living in the women's restroom of this building, still said women on the door. And people would come into the building, still thinking it was a restroom, and they'd open the door, and I'd be in there, on the stove stirring some beans, And so anyway, that's kind of the adventure. Fast forwarding, I started the first business, like I said, with the 3x5 cards and an ink pen. I just keep starting more of them. And a lot of it was fear-based because I didn't want to go back to where I was from. So all the stuff I'm going to talk about here today, I had to learn. I didn't have anybody teach me. KU doesn't teach this stuff. High schools don't teach this stuff. I think schools are very remiss in not teaching this. I mean, there's no two things that govern our lives more while we're on this earth than money and the law, and they don't teach it. I mean, I think it's abhorrent. So anyway, that's the background. And I had a negative net worth. It took me a long time after I got out of high school to pay people back that I'd either stolen from, cheated, borrowed from, didn't pay back. And I was starting from less than zero. Now, one of the things we have, I think, is a fear of Christians is a fear of the economy collapsing because, you know, we've read the book, right? Yeah. We know what's going on. So who in here knows when the economy is going to collapse? Oh, come on, somebody does. Okay, it's good you came today because I'm going to tell you when it's going to collapse. And that's when Jesus comes back. That's right. And it's not going to collapse until that. I've kind of read some things about financial crises. You know, Jesus says, go in and take the land. And, you know, once the children of Israel crossed over into the promised land, the manna stopped. And they had to grow up. Yeah. And they had to start doing things on their own. And in fear kept them from going in. They wanted to hang on to what they had. Yeah. And fear has great imaginations. I mean, depression, anxiety, fear. I mean, you can imagine all kinds of stuff. But faith remembers what God has done for you. Yes. Okay? So every time I'm back out there hanging by a twig again, I get out my list and I start reviewing what God's done for me in the past. So the first financial crisis that I've read about was in 354 BC. And what was happening at that time is in Athens. And the Athenian temple was the richest place in Greece. And the treasurer of the temple saw this money sitting there and he thought, you know, I could be making some money off of this. So he decides he's going to lend it to the banks. And they're paying him interest personally. Well, the banks collapsed and the whole thing collapsed and he went to a prison, which, you know, wasn't like the prisons today. He didn't have an exercise yard and, you know, 3 hot meals and all of that. It was pretty bad for him. So let's go up to the next level on this transparency, can we? What I've done for you, if you guys look at the outline, I've put, I went, because I didn't want to, you know, start at 354 and go through all the financial crises that have happened since then. But just coming up to the 19th century, look at these. I mean, and when you look at these financial crises, when we look at these things, this just didn't affect, like let's look at the first one, the Panic of 1819, a U.S. recession. That just didn't affect the United States. It affects every economy in the world, okay? And you guys can look through these, and the reason I put these out there is that, you know, I want you to see that this has been going on forever. And all these sets that are in here, there are subsets inside of these that aren't even listed. Let's go down to the 1990s. Let's look at 1998 Russian financial crisis. Maybe some of you guys remember that, but there was a company called Long-Term Capital Management that was buying a lot of Russian bonds. And they were so big that it affected the United States economy. The Federal Reserve came in and they put together a consortium of 16 banks and investment banks to put money in this, to bail this thing out because it was threatening to bring down the world economy. This wasn't just the Russian financial crisis. The United States had to come in and straighten this thing out for our own good. And every time there's a crisis, and I have this tendency, it's like, well, this is the one. You know, except for the last one, you know, the really big one we've been through, you know, it didn't bother me. I was telling my partners, I said, I'm not worried about this one. You know, a little more concerned about the next one. I think it's going to be bigger, but I think it's going to be a lot more opportunity. So let's go. I mean, you guys can look at these things on your own. If we can go on the screen down to the history of the last 14 election year bottoms. Now, the reason I want to put this up here is because In the last 14 off-year presidential election cycles, back to 1962, we've had a correction. You guys might have noticed that the Dow was down 665 points on Friday. And usually these corrections, they take an average, let me retrench that. The last 5 of the 6 that have taken place, these corrections have taken place over a period of 10 weeks, okay? So what this does is it lists all of those 14 off-year presidential election cycles back to 1962. It tells the date of the bottom closing low, the close on the S&P 500, the percent of decline, and how long the next rally lasted. So at this time, let's go down again. May we go down to market decline percentages definitions? I want you to be aware of this. A bear market, this is something you might want to really kind of learn and memorize. A bear market is a pullback of over 20% from the high. A major correction is 10 to 20%, and a minor correction is less than 10. As of Friday, I think we've pulled back about 3.5% on the S&P 500. And this stuff is measured against the S&P 500. It's not measured against the NASDAQ or the Dow. The S&P 500 in investing is kind of like water having a specific gravity of 1. Everything is measured against it, okay? So on number D, of those listed in this table, 6 of them were over 20%. 4 were 10%, and 4 were less than 10%. Now, we don't know how low, if the correction happens this year, how low that's going to go. Nobody knows. But before we leave, I'm going to tell you somebody who I've listened to for 25 years, and he has a 100% accuracy in predicting this. I mean, it's just been amazing. And he is the guy I listen to. I've kind of gotten where I can figure the low after, watching this for a lot of years. But I stake what I do on the resource that I'm going to give. And I'm going to give you guys some great resources today. The idea, everybody in here, you are your own financial manager. Whether you work for a company or you work for yourself, you work for a company, you're still in business for yourself. Every one of you are managing your own finances. And the idea is for you guys to learn this stuff where you can manage your own money. And it's not that hard. I mean, it's like anything. It's like, learning a foreign language. Once you get it, it's like, well, that makes sense. But getting the understanding is the part that takes some effort to get it straight in your head. So, the percentage advance in all these cases exceeded 27% from the bottom. Let me just tell you, you guys remember the Brexit vote that took place, a couple years ago? I invested real close to the bottom there. And, when the S&P was up last week, first started falling, in 2 years, I was up, I think it was like 46%. And one of the things that needs to change in our mentality is one of the problems that I had. It's like, well, you go to the bank, you can get 1%, 0.5%, 2%. No, you know what investors get? I had a property we sold in Warrensburg. We were making 54% cash on that. And investors, as an investor, you really need to make bottom 10% a year. I really don't want to invest in anything that I'm making less than 17% a year on. And I'm going to, show you how that's possible because it sounds kind of foreign. I know Pastor Max said earlier, these numbers, we were having lunch. I said, yeah, it's really possible. And Dave Ramsey, actually, he uses 12% in his figures. I'm going to use that in here. And the actual in S&P over time is really closer to 14, 15%. But if you want to be conservative, I would say, use a 12% number. And I'm also going to talk about how the Fed has been at the center of every bubble. At the end, there's something that I want you guys to do. There's probably about a 45-minute radio show that I want you to listen to on the archives. This will explain in just great detail and understandably how the Federal Reserve works. And when you guys understand how central banks work in the world, you're going to understand this stuff. And you're going to understand that right now it's not the time to be putting a whole lot of money into the market, because you're going to understand the business cycle, okay? I know I'm throwing some terms out here that are probably foreign to you, okay? And I'm sorry about that. But you are going to learn this. You guys are going to know this. And this stuff is a lot easier than you think. You know, we're going to take the mystery out of this. But the thing I want you to see most off here up to this point is that this stuff has gone on forever. And wherever that bottom is this year, you know, when it becomes attractive for purchase, that's when you're going to make your most money. That's what people like Warren Buffett do. Okay, they go in and they buy at the bottom. People like Sam Zell, who's one of the best real estate investors, in my opinion, in the country. He's selling stuff right now, waiting for the next downturn to go in and buy because there just aren't any values. So, okay, are there any questions at this point? I mean, I feel like I'm throwing a lot out here, and is everybody okay? Okay. Number 6 on the next page, the good news is you don't have to watch this yourself. One of the things I'm going to give you are people to listen to that I listen to that will tell you when to get out and stuff. In my opinion, you know, they're great. And so you can kind of listen to these people while you're learning this stuff. Now, the next thing, the miracle of compounding. I put in here on a 12% average return, if you invest $400 a month, just $400 a month over 30 years, in the end, you're going to end up with $1,232,788. $400, you know? I mean, the car payment, you know, it's like, you know, Dave Ramsey says, I hope you like the car, you know? You know what I drive? I know some of you people in here know what I drive. Becky knows what I drive. Becky also knows I bought a new vehicle, and it was one of the stupidest things I ever did. And she, huh? It was a good thing you did. Well, it wasn't. You know, you're only one of 2 people that's ever ridden in it. You know, because it sits in the garage. I hate the thing, you know, because it depreciates. I have a 2005 Toyota Camry with 373,000 miles on it. You know, and that's what I drive every day. Yeah. Camrys are great. I love them.
My bumper's falling off. I feel like a millionaire.
You know what? You're smart, okay? This thing, I bought it new. I've spent about $2,000 on repairs on it over the years. And so investing should come first before anything else. Because at some point, everybody in here, if Jesus doesn't come back, you're going to want to retire. And I also want to encourage you that statistics show that most people don't start making a lot of money until they're in their 60s. Warren Buffett even says he didn't start making a lot of money until he was 60. So this is, there's always time to make this work. So, you've invested $144,000 over that period of time with $400, and you've got about $1.25 million. That's serious money. And as inflation changes and you adjust what you put in, this is present value. So, you know, you're actually going to have a lot more when you retire. So, but one of the things I want to talk about here real quick that's on the outline is, you know, kind of some of the effects of things that affect the market. And I think one of the things that really is going to affect the stock market going forward and equity prices and, you know, in big companies, the effects of artificial intelligence. Companies like Netflix, Google, Facebook, you know, all the, you know, millennial companies that have started out there, they use this stuff right up front. But we have Fortune 500 companies, New York Stock Exchange listed companies, NASDAQ companies, people that have been collecting data for over 100 years and have not been using it. So as they start using this is really going to change their cost structure. It's going to change their marketing. It's going to change a lot of things, and it's going to make them a lot more profitable. Now, also, there's a think tank out there that is going to these companies and saying, look, you need to start thinking about what it's going to look like when a product you're selling for $100 now, you have to sell for $10. Because the halo, and the halo is the data that's being created around you all the time. You go to the grocery store, you're carrying a cell phone, they're collecting data on how long you're standing in front of the Cheerios. Okay? So the halo, the data around you is becoming more valuable than the actual product that's being sold. So you're going to see a lot of changes. You know, if you're a radiologist, I'm sorry, you're probably not going to be needed very long because artificial intelligence is going to be able to read the x-rays. You know, and it's interesting right now anyway, some of the things that I own, like, you know, small retail properties and stuff that have mom and pops in them, they used to kind of be the stepchild of the real estate industry. You know, everybody wanted the Kohl's, the Target, you know, things like that. And now, you know, they're kind of like the desirable ones because you still need the nail salon, you need the hair salon. You know, people are probably not going to show up to your door to, you know, do any of those things, you know, like do nails or something. So there's a lot of changes going on in that, and artificial intelligence is really going to be making a difference. The new tax bill, I'll tell you what, guys, this is one of the best things that ever happened to this country. I'm telling you, I am just amazed. Because for somebody like me, let's say that I have a space that somebody wants to move into. Okay, let's say I'm in California. Let's use an extreme example. I have a space that a tenant wants to move into, and I've got to spend $200,000 on that space to get it ready for them. I'm in California, and you know, I'm with federal and former federal and state taxes, I'm paying above 50%. Let's say, you know, 50%. So what I have to do is I have to pay $100,000 on that $200,000 that I'm spending, because I'm spending it out of my profits. So I not only have to spend the 200 grand, but I have to spend another 100,000 on taxes on that 200 grand I've made just to get a tenant in there. And this is true with every area of business. So it's made it not cost effective to do business. So many things are not getting done, and the economy, when it's not growing, because the taxes were killing business. You know, contrary to popular belief, you know, business just doesn't have a pile in the back they go to when the government or somebody needs money. It doesn't work like that. And being able to expense this stuff means that you don't have to pay that 100 grand in addition to the 200 grand you're putting out to get your tenant in there. That is a big deal. Repatriation is an extremely big deal. I had dinner with a guy last year in Arizona, and he put together deals for a very large bank, and he'd just done a $5 billion loan deal with a company that I'm not going to mention. And he was saying that if repatriation became a reality, it's really going to affect those deals because the banks are not going to need to borrow a lot of that money anymore. So I think that's going to be another big deal for our economy.
Hey, Gary, would you explain what repatriation is?
Yes, yes, absolutely. He asked if I'd, I'm sorry?
That's where money's coming back in.
Yes.
Bringing money from overseas, right?
Yes. What he asked was if I'd explain what repatriation is. Companies who do business overseas, because let's say, you know, I don't know, I think Ireland's rate was like 15% or something. Let's say you're doing business in Ireland or any other country. You've paid taxes on that over there already, say at a 15% rate. Well, our government, in its infinite wisdom, decided that if you bring that money back into the United States, you know, you ought to be paying in the upward 30s to our government on top of it. You know, and so they're just saying, you know, we'd rather shove it in a mattress and find somebody we can trust to sleep on it, you know, rather than bring it back into the country. So now at a 15.5% rate, which if I'm correct, I think is what the repatriation rate is, Apple, for example, you guys are probably aware of this. You know, they announced they're going to bring $350 billion back into the country. And one of the nice things about this, let's say at a 15% rate, it's estimated there are $3 trillion out there in money overseas in American companies. At 15%, that's $450 billion to our treasury that we would have never had. I mean, we're talking real money here. You know? I mean, we're not talking, you know, homeless kid kind of money. This is serious stuff. So lower corporate rates are bringing a lot of business back into the country, because why in the world would you make something here where you're going to pay in the upper 30s if you can make it overseas and pay 15%? You know? I mean, this is like such basic stuff. You wonder what the meatheads in Washington are doing. You know? I'm sorry, I get a little, you know. Okay, now, the next thing on the list is that I'm going to say is don't play the lottery. Okay, and I'm going to demonstrate why. Excuse me here a second. Okay, what we're going to do is play Who Wants to Become a Billionaire? Okay, I need 2 people that want to become a billionaire. Oh, excellent. Okay, 2 people. I want you to select a key. Who else wants to be a billionaire? Only 2 people want to be a billionaire. Oh my, okay. Well, I was going to ask Pastor Max to do the drawing. I don't see him because I know that his character is impeccable, because I talked to Molly before this and she said he was a lot like living with Jesus. So, I need you to pull 2 numbers out of here. Give me one first for her and then one first for this woman. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Now, what key or what number did you select?
32.
Okay. 32. I'm sorry. This is number 11. Oh. Okay, what number did you pick?
14.
14. I'm sorry, this is 13. Okay.
So close.
I'm sorry. You know, and I was really going to give you $1 billion. I'm sorry. So, the example that I want to make here is that on this board, you have a 1 in, well, you had a 1 in 33 chance. You had a 1 in 32 chance of getting the right key, okay? These keys are spaced 2 inches apart. The odds of winning the lottery are 1 in 292 million on the Powerball. That means when you put down $2, you think that is 9,217 miles of keys. And you're telling yourself that you're going to go to find that one key out of over 9,000 miles that's going to win you the lottery. It ain't happening, folks. You know? And let me tell you something, even if you did, you guys have all heard the stories about people who've won the lottery and their lives are ruined. You know? I was in Italy last year. Becky knows this because I hated the place, and I called Becky and just said, yeah, I hate this place, you know. And, but I was in the old city in Rome, and there's something there called the Arch of Titus, and it goes through the road that leads down to the old city. And when a conquering general would conquer, you know, back then they were city-states. You know, Italy wasn't, you know, one country. They were all city-states. So the general goes out and he conquers a city. And he comes back and they'd have a parade for him. And the people would line this road going down through the Arch of Titus. And he'd be in his chariot. And they'd have the captives, you know, the people that they'd taken slaves going before the chariot. And he'd be throwing out plunder that they'd gotten from the city-state. And behind him in the chariot, there would be a servant that would be whispering in his ear, all glory is fleeting. And the reason they did that is because they didn't want the glory to crush him. And incidentally, I believe this is where Paul got his metaphor, that Jesus led the captives before him, making a spectacle of them, and he gave gifts to men. And it also says that Jesus carries an eternal weight of glory. And he is the only one that is able to carry that weight. Any of the rest of us, if we get too much glory, it's going to crush us. And that's why when you see Hollywood stars, you see NFL stars, sports stars, people that win the lottery, they get too much too fast and it crushes them. Either way, you're going to lose. Whether you're paying $2 for a lottery ticket or you win, you're going to lose. That's my opinion. So, matter of fact, I just want to say everything I'm saying here today is my opinion, okay? So, okay. Well, I'm so sorry you guys didn't win. I was really looking forward to that. Yeah, you were just one off. Yeah, you almost got it. Okay. All right. Nice, close, but no cigar. Okay. Okay. I know this guy. There's this guy I know. And most people I know are like this, that have wealth. Cars, watches, jewelry, and stuff mean nothing to them. And I don't know how much he has. You know, about 6-7 years ago, a guy who worked for him worked for me on a project. And he said, well, you know, in addition, you know, to land, real estate, all his assets, he's got about $25 million in cash. And you know, if you see this guy, you think he just woke up in City Market, you know? And I knew another guy that lived up north of the river like that. I was in the moving business once, and we were working this auction, and we were going to be, you know, hauling stuff out for the auction. We'd contract with people who bought stuff. And he comes up to me, and I thought, oh, gosh, here comes this guy. I mean, he didn't have a stinking dime. Oh, my gosh. I'm not going to tell you his name, but I thought, well, yeah, I was wrong, you know. So it's okay to not look the role, you know. And it's kind of like one time when I was working on the plaza years ago, there was a restaurant down there that had a dress code. You know, you had to wear a jacket. And George Brett comes in, and he's wearing jeans and a T-shirt. And it's like, well, who's going to tell George Brett, you know, you're not going to come in unless you're dressed properly, you know? So it really doesn't matter. You know, the Bible also says there's one who pretends to have much and has nothing, and one who pretends to have nothing and has much. So, you know, don't get hung up on what you have. Things are nice. I mean, it's nice to have things. But creation of wealth so that you're not enslaved is more important than the things we have. Because like Dave Ramsey says, you know, you live like nobody else, someday you're going to live like nobody else. You know, my whole focus from the time I was in my early 20s was I wanted to have incomes that I didn't have to work for. And I got kicked out of a fellowship group in a church because of this. You know, because the focus was, well, you know, Gary, Jesus can teach you anything you need to know. You don't have to go to school. You don't have to do this and that. And I was just saying, no, I don't want to do that. And, you know, I was kicked out of this fellowship group, and I still went to the church. And one night they had something that they were going to discuss, and they only wanted sheep there. And so we all had to go sit with the shepherd. I went and sat with my former shepherd, and they just said, no, you're a goat, you have to leave. So I had to get up and leave in front of everybody. But let me tell you something about sheep. You know, if you've ever been around sheep, they don't look at you. You know, they're always looking and seeing what the herd's doing, you know? I mean, and I guess I just, you know, didn't want to do what the herd was doing. I don't know. So as much as possible, I mean, you know, borrowing money on a house is fine. And I won't say never borrow money, because I borrowed money in my businesses, but almost every time except for one that I can remember, I had the money to actually buy the piece of equipment, but I wanted to keep it in case I needed cash flow in order to make it work. So I've never had a credit card, still to this day. You know, I've always lived below my means, and sometimes that was very low. When I was living in the restroom, there was twice I had $1.87 in the bank and nothing to eat, and something that came in, some work came in so I could eat. I mean, God is faithful, you know. Amen. So now I want to give you some resources here. You know, I talked about, you know, you don't have to watch this stuff yourself. There's this investment letter I subscribe to. It's called Bob Brinker's Market Timer. And Bob Brinker has a radio show every Sunday on KCMO. It's a nationally syndicated radio show from 3 to 6. And this is the guy that I was saying I've never heard make a wrong call. And I believe there's a reason for that. And one of the reasons I believe for that is that he never takes the glory to himself. He always, no, people call and say, boy, I'm at critical mass, I don't have to work anymore, I followed your advice. He goes, no, it wasn't me, you did the work. And let me tell you why I think that's important. There used to be a guy here in Kansas City, and I'm not going to mention his name either, but he was an economist. And when this guy spoke, everybody listened. I mean, I used to trade down at Charles Schwab, and I saw days where this guy would just say, the market is top, sell everything. And, everything would just nosedive. There'd be this tremendous sell-off. I think it was Time magazine one time had him on the cover in a robe like Moses holding 2 tablets of stone. And the guy made the statement, I don't expect to ever make a wrong call again. And after that, guys, I don't remember him ever making a right call. And so this is one of the reasons, in my opinion, that I think that this guy is so accurate is because he doesn't take the glory to himself. So he has a newsletter. It's $165 a year. And you won't get these, you'll get a electronic or a paper newsletter every month or something. But if there's something that is either a buy signal or a sell signal in his view, he sends you an email and lets you know. This guy called the bottom of the last financial crisis in 2009. He called the bottom of Brexit. I mean, I bought in, a few points above. I mean, he called the bottom. I've seen him call the top. And he's very quiet about it. I mean, he doesn't, he's not out there, he's not on CNBC being interviewed that I've seen, or Bloomberg or any of these places. But I'm just letting you guys know what I do. Okay? I would not listen, he doesn't do this anymore, but there was a time that he actually recommended individual stocks that I heard, and he doesn't really, on the air, and he doesn't really do that anymore that I've heard. And that I saw, in my view, didn't play out quite as well. But boy, I'll tell you what, listen to this radio show. And if you can, subscribe to the newsletters, every year, 2, 3, whatever. If there's some kind of development, you'll get an email. And you'll learn a lot from his radio show. I mean, it's a lot of basic stuff. You get a lot of people that call in and go, yeah, I got about $10,000 in 401k, and, I was just wondering if, I should, barbecue this pig I was having, or something, but he's very knowledgeable, and when he gets good questions, man, his answers are great. So I'd recommend that. I've written on here when his radio show is. In the third hour of every show that he has a guest author, and these people are brilliant. There's somebody who's written a new book, and I'm going to tell you something, guys. If you're not, reading new books, reading at least one new book a month, something nonfiction, you should be, because you should always be learning. I'm going to this cryptocurrency thing now, and I'm learning about cryptocurrencies. I happen to know somebody who's the founder of this group here in Kansas City, and there are people that come from all over the country to this thing. And so you should always be learning. The whole cryptocurrency thing is fascinating to me. So that's probably another talk. So there's this radio show. It says on number 3, it says Capitalist Pigs. They've changed the name of the show to Free Market Underground. This guy's name is Chris Butler. He's an investment manager at a local company called Butler Lands and Wagler. And every Saturday morning at 8 o'clock on KCMO, he has an hour-long radio show. And he gives statistics and information that happened in the business world over the week. My opinion, I think he's the best I've heard. I mean, I can't recall anybody that's better than this guy. You need to be careful, I think, in my opinion, when you listen to him, because, you know, you can kind of interpret some of the things he says negatively, and don't do that. If it's something you're thinking, you know, sounds negative, I would, you know, certainly put that in the back of my mind on a shelf somewhere. Because he'll talk about, for example, leading economic indicators, you know, and they'll say, you know, well, this month, you know, they did this or that, and maybe it sounds a little negative. And this stuff like leading economic indicators and a lot of this stuff, I know it sounds foreign, but, you know, you're going to become where you understand it, you know the terminology, and you're going to know stuff to watch. I mean, guys, I'm telling you, you can do this. If I can do it, anybody can do it. I didn't go to an Ivy League school. Matter of fact, I don't even have a degree. I changed majors 5 times, you know, because I couldn't decide what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I still can't. So, still laboring with that. I don't really personally care for Chris on market timing issues. And now this, on number C, this book, The Intelligent Investor. If some of you have kind of an investment background, this is a great book to read. Benjamin Graham, the author of this book, is the person that Warren Buffett learned investing from. And it's a bit meaty. If you guys want to get this book, I'd recommend getting the one that was updated in 1973 before Graham died, and getting the one that has a commentary on it. There's a guy that has done a commentary to it to bring it up to, you know, more recent date. So that's a good one. There's a great book called Common Sense on Mutual Funds by John Bogle. And you know, I listed the Free Market Underground broadcast here. Now, I want to talk about a little bit about if you make a mistake, and I want to talk about God's redemptive power. I'm going to tell you something, guys. I made a big mistake. Now, this isn't the only mistake I've made, you know, but in 2007, I hadn't heard from God in a while, you know, and God was speaking to me. I mean, when I sold my business, I saw this Y this Y shape in my mind, and I sensed that God was telling me, you can sell it or keep it, whichever way you go down the Y, you're going to be okay. And I sold it. So in 2007, I start seeing this Y again in my mind. I start, you know, I mean, you guys ever had God speak to you by confirming something 3 times, right? Well, I'm in this marble store in Bonner Springs. I look at this piece of stained glass, and it has this Y shaped exactly like the one that I'm seeing. I go over to one of my partner's houses, and he's putting shutters on his house. He's made these shutters in his garage, and he's putting them on. And he put this Y right in the center. And I said, why did you do that? He goes, I don't know. I just thought, you know, it needed a design. I thought, well, that's a weird design. So I felt like God was telling me to sell this property. And it just didn't make sense. You know? I just thought, God, this doesn't make sense. Is this you? And I'm thinking, I'm not even sure this is God, you know? And I'll tell you, you know, I didn't do it. I'm not going to, you know, go into a lot of the story. You know, we had one person, one group come in to buy it, and, you know, the CMBS financing, you know, that's commercial mortgage-backed securities. That financing dried up, and then there was somebody else came in to buy it. I was trickling out information because I didn't want to sell it, but yet I wanted to be obedient. And so we ended up not selling it, and we went through the downturn that really started hitting in 2008. Guys, I'm going to tell you, this was a lot to do. They closed the intersection in front of the property. The state of Kansas sued us, and a pipeline company sued us to condemn one of our parking lots. We thought we were going to have to tear one of the buildings down that we just built. and they said our losses were only going to be $5,000 and it was going to be in the millions. What else happened? Oh, our bank failed. The FDIC sued us. A new bank sued us. I was paying 7 lawyers at 4 different law firms. And the only thing I can tell you, folks, is if something like that happens, you better have a good copy machine. Because you're going to be making lots of copies. You're going to be filling out lots of interrogatories. You're going to be fulfilling a lot of discovery requests. And it was a mess. So I ended up going to the bank that failed. One of the vice presidents of that bank became the president of another local bank. And they were part of a regional bank. And I went to these people, it's like, well, yeah, your bank failed and, we're really in trouble now. Would you mind loaning me some money? And nobody was loaning money back then. So I get a call from one of the loan officers at this bank, and he said, our bank president is in town from Denver, and, he wants to meet you. And so I met with these 2 local bankers and the guy out of Denver, and the guy from Denver says, okay, what's going on? So I explained to him everything, all the lawsuits and all this stuff. And 2 hours after the meeting, I get a call from one of the bankers, local bankers, and he says, our bank president was really impressed with you. He said he was very impressed with your composure under very difficult circumstances. And I thought, well, yeah, he didn't talk to my friends. He didn't talk to my girlfriend. He didn't talk to the liquor store. It was a very stressful time. So anyway, long story short, they ended up making us the loan, and they bailed us out of this thing. But it was a mess. And, I don't know what would have happened if I'd have done what my prompting was. But I'll tell you, I got the same prompting on another property, and I did it. I'm still going to say it wasn't easy, but I did it. And Joseph Prince tells this story. This is along similar lines. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up. He tells us the same story. He had a parishioner who owned a business. And the Lord told her to do something, and she didn't do it. And she went through extremely difficult times. But God's redeeming powers, he brought her out of it, and she actually made a lot of money on it. And we did too, actually. So anyway, the homework is, I want you guys to go to that, the website freemarketunderground.com, and I want you to look up the October 21st, 2017 show and listen to that on how central banks work. I think you're going to be able to understand it. You may not understand all the terminology, but you're going to understand how it works. And this is going to be such great benefit to you. I want that to help you take the fear out of investing because, if things get bad, what do? They just start printing money. And I want you guys to understand how this works. So the takeaways from this, it's always going to happen. Don't be afraid of it. Just look at that as the time to invest. And, the central banks are going to come to the rescue. Do I have time to take a couple questions if anybody has them? Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
I got a question about your cryptocurrency.
Yes.
I understand Bitcoin is real big right now.
Uh-huh.
Also, the blocking is real big. Now, these are also supposed to be pointed towards in the future of taking a mark. Is this something that we should be investing in, or?
Well, here's the deal. When I first got saved, we thought they could just collapse the economy any time and just line us up and start tattooing a mark on us like they did at Auschwitz. It doesn't matter when it is, you could take a mark. I wouldn't worry about that because you're not going to be here. Okay? That's my opinion. Pastor Max, I would defer that to Pastor Max, but
I was just going to add, you said everything great. I just understand Christians for years live in fear of the future. And,
Yes.
And that leads us to making poor financial decisions.
Yeah.
A lot of
Can you
people.
speak into the mic so it'll be on the recording?
Yeah, so we love each other. Christians a lot of times operate in fear of the future, which leads us to make poor financial decisions. So for years they told people don't ever put any money in the market. That's mammon or something, it's ungodly. That costs Christians, you ought to have money in the stock market. I mean, the church just made a bunch of money this past January because we have some of our savings in stocks. And so we're trying to save for a building, and we went through a big uptick, so we made a lot of money. So, that's our opinion. Now, that's our opinion, all right? Investing carries significant risk, so he explained all that. But do what God tells you to do, but don't be scared of the devil or whatever. So,
And you're going to, as you learn this, you're going to learn how to do it. And you're not going to be afraid of it, okay? So, the fear of investing, like Pastor Max just said, is what has really kept me so many years. I don't know, maybe God had me that way because of my personality, I'd try to take over as dictator of the United States or something, if I'd have been allowed to go. But, okay, one more question, anybody?
somebody had one, Josh.
Oh, well, I'll take you and then I'll take you the last one.
So you're giving us this information on doing the research, and so we should be feeling what God tells us, and then we tell our investors, like the company that we go through, to then work on our behalf? Is that-
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there are practical aspects to investing. And there's a practical aspect. I don't know what you do for a living, but all of us do our jobs, and there's practical aspects. Like you got to show up on time, okay? And you need to learn how investing works. Now, if God tells you something specific, that's different. But otherwise, this is just like a job. You're just learning how to do something. Does that make sense?
So the point of this was so that we're understanding the stock market better and making better choices, but not for us to take it on ourselves, but to use the specialists.
Well, if you know what you're doing, you don't need somebody.
I don't.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah, no. Yeah, so, you've got it. You understand this stuff, right?
There are specialists for a reason, and so we're not telling you to just take everything on yourself if you don't feel comfortable doing that. But there's wisdom. How many of you, sometimes you go to a doctor to help you take care of your health, right? But that doesn't mean that I shouldn't study about how to take care of my own self and take responsibility for myself, right? And so your finances are the same way. I don't know that it's wisdom to just give all your money to somebody and not ever know what goes on with it, So.
Matter of fact, I'd say it's not. I have because I have.
I agree.
Yeah, I have a friend who is in financial services. She's worked for a lot of the big houses like Morgan Stanley and Goldman, and she's been with Commerce Bank Shares. She was with Block Financial, and she told me one day about, and this stuff happens, guys, and this is why I'd like for you to be your own financial managers. They had a broker in their office that had a window office, and he was getting ready to lose it because his production had dropped, and they were going to put him back out in the cube farm. So he starts calling all of his clients and says, hey, we need to get you out of this fund and get you into this other fund. They were parallel funds. They did the same thing. But he got a commission, got his numbers up, and got to keep his window office. And I'm not saying everybody does that, but I'm saying there are sharks out there. And you're better off learning yourself. Mr. Josh?
Yeah. So my question, I think, is more along the lines of I'm not afraid of investing. I'm not. It's something I'm completely fine with. I just wanted to know, from your standpoint, what does it look like as far as like a weekly time commitment? Because I know that there's shows that you listen to and things that you're doing, but there was other things you mentioned about getting out of the market, getting in the market. What does it look like weekly for you?
Oh, weekly it doesn't. I mean, weekly for me it looks like, reading something I haven't read before. It looks like listening to these 2 radio broadcasts. I don't watch the market every day. I mean, you do that, you go crazy, and it's not necessary, right? Yeah. So, yeah, okay. Well, listen, thank you all very much for coming, and I really appreciate seeing all of you, and thank you, Pastor Max, for
Give Brother Gary a hand.
Thank you.
So, I think there's a lot to all this stuff. And so, don't walk away from this thinking, well, now I know everything there is to know about money, right? This is why I appreciate how he gives us all these resources. We want to study, we want to learn things. I think this stuff's interesting. I love investments and learning about this stuff, so I love talking to Brother Gary. And I love his story. Even if you make a bad decision, which I have, God will redeem it, amen, and He'll turn it around. So there's anything you do that makes any impact for God requires risk. So you have to be willing to take risk. And now you don't want to just do crazy stuff. You want to do calculated risk, amen. So anyway, we love you guys. I think it stopped snowing. So take a small risk and drive home really slow, and we'll see you next week, okay? Have a great week. If you have a session review form, what do you want to do with those, Gary?
Just, is the table still up out there?
It is not. Just come put them right up here, and Gary will grab them.
Sarah, just hand them to Sarah, is that okay?
Or put them on the
Yeah,
table.
put them on the
Put them right
stage,
there.
super duper, yeah.
Gary will grab them on the way out. Be safe. We love you guys.